Antoinette Lee is a wellness warrior, freelance writer, consultant, motivational health and wellness speaker, and adventure enthusiast who proves anyone can overcome setbacks with a positive mindset. She is a former tech CEO, 11-year Army veteran, and powerlifter. Qualified in air assault, there was a time in Antoinette's life when jumping out of helicopters and ascending buildings and mountains to treat patients was a part of her typical day. She spent time as a disease prevention official in infection control, becoming familiar with pharmacology and the prevention of infectious diseases. Antoinette's life was full of action and drive until a traumatic brain and spinal injury stopped her in her tracks, and she found herself days from death. After pulling herself out from the darkness and back to a life of adventure, until she found herself at the mercy of her health yet again with numerous illnesses, PTSD, and a debilitating lupus-like autoimmune condition that took control of her life. Antoinette was determined to push forward. With a positive mindset, her deep faith, and a drive to overcome, she took her health into her own hands with a powerful combination of natural remedies and conventional medication to heal her symptoms. With the help of a compassionate, functional medicine doctor, she was able to regain her mobility and get back to an adventure-filled life of whitewater kayaking and hiking again. Antoinette's passion for nature-infused action inspired her to create the American Adventure Sports Club, a nonprofit sharing ecology and adventure in the great outdoors with families from urban areas. She is host of the new Normal Big Life podcast, where she shares practical natural health and wellness tips, thrilling outdoor experiences, and disaster-ready know-how with authenticity and grit. Antoinette proves living an adventure-filled life is possible when you set your mind to it. Get ready to be inspired and empowered to take that first step. Let's dive in. Have you tried everything to eliminate autoimmune symptoms like joint pain and digestion issues without relief? Are you struggling to keep up with the demands of life due to chronic fatigue? Does chronic pain keep you from doing the things you love in life? If you are feeling defeated and hopeless, you are not alone. I am Ashley Cavolo, a busy working mom who once struggled with debilitating autoimmune symptoms. I too felt like giving up after trying every possible solution without relief from symptoms like joint pain and stiffness, painful digestion issues, relentless chronic fatigue, and embarrassing brain fog, until it was time to stop allowing the pain to control my life. I dove into the root cause of autoimmune diseases and was shocked to find the answer is not found in endless doctor visits, harsh medications, expensive supplements, or strict food lists. The secret to healing autoimmune symptoms is found within the specific habits that reduce inflammation and heal symptoms quickly and naturally. I applied what I learned and found relief from my symptoms in a matter of weeks. 7 years later, I am living a pain-free life free of autoimmune symptoms. I turned this discovery into a self-paced program called the Autoimmune Reboot, where I share my secrets and my step-by-step process to help you heal your symptoms quickly so you can live a pain-free life. This podcast is for you if you are ready to eliminate joint pain so you can jump out of bed every morning pain-free. Heal and maintain a healthy gut so you can enjoy your favorite foods again without that uncomfortable bloat. Go from no energy and endless coffee breaks to an abundance of natural energy and stamina to tackle the day. Eliminate uncomfortable autoimmune symptoms such as bloating, brain fog, constipation, diarrhea, digestion pain, inflammation, joint stiffness, skin rashes, and many more. Living a pain-free life is easier and closer than you think. I can't wait to show you what I discovered. Refresh your coffee and let's dive in. Welcome, Antoinette Lee, to the podcast. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You were diagnosed with a lupus-like autoimmune condition and you battled symptoms and chronic pain. Can you talk about your story and explain what you went through?
Sure. Before the lupus-like autoimmune diagnosis, I was serving in the Army for 11 years. I was in healthcare. One of the things that I was doing was that I was an air assault qualified expert field medic, which means I rappelled out of helicopters and down buildings and mountains and gave people emergency first aid. I also worked in a clinical setting. I was an infection control and disease prevention officer. And I say all of these things because I had a good healthcare background, including pharmacology, and I still got injured by the system. And so here's my story. After my injury, I suffered a traumatic brain injury and spinal cord injury. By the time I left the Army and started my civilian career in IT, I switched from healthcare to IT and or tech nowadays they call it. And I was having trouble remembering things, making new memories. I started losing my mobility, stability, having gut health issues, chronic fatigue, unable to sleep. I needed 3 surgeries. I had a 4th one scheduled. But by the time that happened, I was down to eating, really only drinking clear broth and water in small sips throughout the day. I was wasting away. And my doctor told me if I was unable to start eating food, she would have to admit me into the hospital. And so I was really in a bad way. And one day, my service dog, my full-time caregiver were both very concerned. And we planned to go to the emergency room the next day. But at some point during that day, I felt like I wasn't going to make it until the next day. But rather than saying, I need to go to the emergency room now, I believed all hope was lost. My dog wouldn't leave my side, my service dog. And she was looking at me like she was saying goodbye. She was looking at me like, I don't want to miss a moment with you. She wouldn't eat, drink, go to the bathroom, all the things she would normally do. She wouldn't leave my side at all. So I decided, well, I might not make it till tomorrow. I should get myself right with God. I felt like I already had done all of the things that my faith required of me. And I told God that I was grateful for the life that I had, even though I was not going to make it to see my 40th birthday. Well, actually, I think it was my 45th birthday that I was worried about. I just think for the life I led, I had loved and been loved. I'd accomplished things. I'd like to say when I was in the military, I was the hero of my own story because I was a well-respected leader. At that time, I was a competitive power lifter and bodybuilder for the Army with a 200-pound bench press, a 350-pound squat, and a 500-pound deadlift. And I was moving through the ranks very quickly as part of the staff sergeant mafia, we used to say, because we all worked together to get things done that seemed impossible. And so I was the hero of my own story a few years ago. And now I'm in my bed thinking this is my last day. And I had quickly gone from hero to zero. And I told God, I'm grateful for the life I've had. But if you give me one more day, I'm going to figure out why I'm so sick and tired. And I'm going to reach back and help other people because no one should have to go through this. And so that was sort of my turning point because I did wake up the next day. It was 2 or 3 in the morning. And for the first time in maybe 18 months, I could actually sit up in bed on my own, reach for my walker on my own, and walk to the bathroom on my own, which was something that I could not even do the day before. And nothing else changed other than thinking that I was dying and being in gratitude, waking up the next morning with slightly more energy and strength. And so I sat at the computer and I started writing. Well, I have a new lease on life. What am I going to do with it? And that's when I decided I needed to create my new normal. I'm never getting my old life back. What am I going to do now? What's next? And so that's what I did. I created my new normal on paper and then I set out to live it.
If this story doesn't give people hope, I don't know what will. Honestly.
Thank you.
Your mindset shift was everything. I would love to know what were some of the first steps at that point that you took to start your healing journey?
Well, the first step in my new normal big life healing journey is deciding what my new normal would be. And so I gave myself permission not to think about what God would want me to do, what my family would want me to do, what society would want me to do, what my training and education would suggest that I do. What does Antoinette want to do? And I knew from a very young age, I was born and raised in New York City in a little house in Queens, New York. Both my parents were born and raised on farms, and my time was all of my free time was spent on my mother's family farm in Virginia, and I absolutely loved it. And I thought that is what my new normal is going to be, because it would be the most healthy lifestyle for someone managing a chronic disability. And so I wrote out what kinds of people I would have around me, what I would do as a profession living in the country or even in the backwoods, because my ultimate goal was move to the country and then deep into the backwoods to really homestead and just live a more traditional life. And I created this visionary world, adding it each step to my spreadsheet, which would become my checklist. And then once I had a vision for what my new normal would be, how I would show up in the world, how the people around me would show up in the world, I woke up every day taking one action towards that. So that one action would be eating a Mediterranean diet. It would be my yoga, Pilates, and exercise band routine. It would be getting outside in nature. Each day was one step, one step, one step. It was rewriting my resume to become a ghostwriter, and then later rewriting the resume to become a journalist. And I wrote my resume and posted it at 11 p.m. the day that I rewrote it, and created an online profile as a contractor and a freelance contractor. The next morning, I had an interview. By that day, I had a book deal to ghostwrite someone's book. Once you get on that journey and you start step by step every day, checking off one step. And so each day, although I added one additional step, so it started with, I'm going to stop listening to my doctors and what they told me to eat, and eat how I think I should be eating, the way I was raised to eat. Then the next day it was, today I'm going to add new supplements, vitamins, minerals. Now I have 2 steps, and then I had 3 steps. And so you build on these steps and you start practicing these new things every day until next thing you know, you're living your new normal. And it's a big life. My life now is bigger than I ever imagined it to be. And so, for example, when I said I'm going to get outside and adventure, I took that to a whole new level. My recreational therapist suggested archery to rewire my brain for things like focus and reading comprehension and even holding this conversation. I couldn't hold this conversation the day after I got out of my bed and said, I'm creating my new normal and living a big life. And then my occupational therapist recommended whitewater kayaking. And so I learned to whitewater kayak when I was still using a walker. And from there, I became a sponsored adventure sports athlete at 53, and they thought I was 35. I had to tell them, I'm 53, not 35. And they said, we still want you anyway. And that led to multiple relationships with companies like Kokatat and Carhartt and Badfish SUP, and an ambassadorship from the Veterans Administration to get other people outside adventuring and creating this healthy lifestyle.
That is incredible.
Yeah, so the VA system employs, I think it's through, if I remember correctly, it's through their occupational therapy program. They partner with a lot of nonprofit organizations like Team River Runner, No Barriers USA, and they offer, and many, many others, they offer free training, equipment, safety trips, like camping trips for veterans and their family members. And they're teaching you all of these various sports, adventure sports. And that's how I decided to open my own nonprofit, because I saw a lot of people who were not connected to the military, but they were from low-income households or middle-income earners who just found themselves on hard times and couldn't afford to get outside and adventure. So we provide free adventure sports for youth, seniors, young adults, everyone in between, and families together to recreate at no cost.
Wow, to think you were struggling to walk with a walker and now you're doing extreme sports.
It's
That
pretty
is
incredible to me too. I look back
wild.
on it, and if you follow me on social media, you'll see that I will be 58 this year in November, in just a few months, and people still think that I'm in my late 30s.
You are inspiring me, and I'm sure you're inspiring the listeners.
Thank you so
That is
much.
incredible. Your story and the steps you took, they resonate with me because it is pretty much the same path that I took. And I start in my program with a vision. I have the students think of their vision, what it looks like, feels like, smells like. I want them to feel it. And I think that is an incredible first step that people can take to really get in that mindset and give them that little boost to just take the first step.
I love that you have a step-by-step plan in the autoimmune reboot. So many podcasts and doctors and experts will tell people about natural medicine and integrative medicine that they can use to get better, but it's very complicated and there are a lot of action steps and you have to be a self-starter to even get started. So with your program, what I love about it is that you make it simple for people to start practicing, boom, 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 in a step-by-step process. You've taken some of the thinking and worry out of all of this for your clients, and I love that so much.
Thank you. Yes, that is the goal. And what you're talking about here, the process you took, the steps, you started with one thing and you focused in on that, and then you moved on to the next thing. I started with food. And then I started to feel better. My digestion improved. I had more energy. The brain fog lifted. And then I could move into movement or whatever felt like the next best step. What are some of your non-negotiable habits that you practice every day since going through this healing journey?
This is so huge. So I didn't talk much about my lupus-like autoimmune disease diagnosis and sort of the 3-year battle with doctors to listen to me and stop saying you just need a consult to mental health, right? And we can dive into that a little bit because one of my non-negotiables is that I don't tolerate any healthcare provider who doesn't value my opinion, who doesn't treat me as if I am an equal participant in my own healthcare. Anyone who wants to dictate to me how I'm going to be treated as a patient doesn't have my best interests at heart. So with my story, my autoimmune story, in 2019, I went from whitewater kayaking the Arkansas River at flood conditions, whitewater kayaking the Cache La Puta River near Fort Collins, Colorado at flood conditions. Then going to mountaineering school, finishing mountaineering school, summiting Baxter's Pinnacle in Moose, Wyoming, then attempting the Grand Tetons in Wyoming. And I did that in 4 consecutive weeks. Boom, 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 one to the other at over 50. And then within a few weeks after that, I could hardly walk up the stairs in my house. I wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating, I had difficulty breathing. I was fainting and I didn't know what was happening. I started gaining weight, even though I wasn't eating any differently. I was still managing to exercise a little bit, like very, very little. And I'm just talking a daily yoga routine. That was all that I could manage. And then I went to 5 different doctors, and one doctor told me that I should embrace the weight gain as body positivity and people are beautiful in all shapes and sizes. I was appalled. They didn't run any tests. They just said, embrace the 40 pounds of weight that you inexplicably gained. And so I went to the next doctor. By then, I had received a notification from a store where I shop that I had purchased, or that a product that I purchased had contained listeria. I went to my doctor and said, I have been very sick. Here are my symptoms. Here is the store that said the product I purchased had listeria. And then they said, listeria doesn't happen in the United States. It's in your mind. Didn't run any tests. I went to another doctor, and another doctor, a cardiologist, told me just embrace the weight gain. Another one said I just need to have a consult to mental health. And a third one said, what are you, some kind of conspiracy theorist? Listeria doesn't happen in the US, and it absolutely does, according to the CDC and others. And the store told me the product had listeria. So I was completely gaslit. And it took 3 years before I found a doctor who would believe that an American middle-class woman could have contracted listeria. But then I was also having symptoms of something that's called COSI. It's known as valley fever. I spent time in the southwestern desert recreating, camping, kayaking, and so forth. And that's a fungal infection that I contracted. And then I had the lupus-like autoimmune symptoms. So I had this very complex autoimmune disease plus lymphedema. My legs were so big that it was getting difficult to walk, and no one would take me seriously. So I moved to the Northwoods in the Midwest, and I found a Midwestern doctor who immediately took me serious, ran the tests, and said yes to everything. You are absolutely right. So I had an listeria exposure, I had the valley fever, I had lymphedema, and all of these things create a massive amount of inflammation in your body. And it was starting to affect my heart and create an irregular heart rhythm. If someone had taken me seriously back in 2019, and this was 2025 that I finally got help this year. If someone had taken me seriously back in 2019, my heart would have not been affected by the inflammation. So my heart is sound. I can run a mile on good days, but I have this irregular heartbeat, probably from the long-term chronic inflammation. So you have to be your own patient advocate. You have to learn how to calmly advocate for yourself with your healthcare practitioners, but don't give up. And I also had to be my own healthcare practitioner and find natural ways to heal myself.
It's unfortunately the story for so many. They go through the vicious cycle, doctor visits and tests, and some get answers, some don't. And even when you have the answers, you learn it's not what you need. In many cases. I personally went through something similar, spent a year and a half, maybe, visiting specialists, doctors. I fell under too many autoimmune conditions. I had every symptom under the sun. It got so bad I struggled to walk. And I went into the doctor finally and I said, something is wrong. And he said, go home, wait for things to get worse, and then maybe the red flags will pop up and we'll be able to figure out what is wrong. And I thought, how could it get worse? If it gets worse, I could be in a wheelchair. I could wake up one day and not be able to move. So that was my turning point. And I realized I have to do something, take my health into my own hands. And that's when everything shifted. Certainly resonate with that journey you went on. And I'm sure so many other people will too. You lead me to one of the big questions I always ask. What would you say to somebody who says you can't heal chronic disease, an autoimmune condition, chronic pain, or someone who believes it's just not possible?
I would say don't believe the hype of big pharma, big ag, and the medical industrial complex. Think about it this way. There's no money in you getting better. There's no money in you being healed, because once I'm healed, I don't have to go to my doctor, well, multiple doctors every 3 months or every month or every week for various therapies. Once you're healed, or once you at least put your symptoms into remission. I believe healing can occur because for many years I was completely, well, I won't say completely symptom free. The broken back always gave me some pain. I'm almost never without pain, but I have found some secret natural remedies lately that is relieving pain. So for the first time in my life since breaking my back, I do have some completely pain-free days, and that's huge for me. But you can't believe these people who have a financial interest in you remaining sick and under care, buying therapies and doctor visits and exams. And it's not that I'm against conventional medicine, allopathic medicine. I do still use some allopathic medicine. In fact, I had to use some to put my autoimmune system condition into remission. But I used very old drugs recommended by my doctor, hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. And it took 3 months. And I had gotten myself maybe 80% into remission with natural methods. And I had a choice. I could continue using natural methods. And of course, they work at a slower rate because they're gentler. or I could use a medication, a prescription medication, and get there a little faster. When I started to have the irregular heartbeat, I decided I needed to get there faster than natural medicine could get me there. And they ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, along with some other practices like detox, liver detox, using lemon water, believe it or not, and using methylene blue to help with the chronic fatigue, which has been amazing. So I'm not against allopathic medicine, but you have to realize who you're dealing with and why. And not saying that every doctor is just in it for the money, but I've had doctors gaslight me, like with chronic migraine. I did not want Botox because my immune system is already in overdrive. So one doctor said, I want you to be in my program for treatment of my chronic migraine, and it's with Botox. And I said, I don't want to do that. And he said, well, every woman wants a facelift. You can get a mini facelift with the Botox. And I said, try again. Botox is not given in your face. It's given around the circumference of your head, which doesn't improve your looks, your wrinkles and fine lines. And then he said, well, if you don't accept the program, I'm going to tell your insurance carrier that you are refusing medical treatment. And I pulled out my phone and showed him that I had a reporter, a journalist on speed dial, plugged into my contacts. And I said, do it, and you will be on news at 11. So he backed down. I got a new doctor, but that's the level of gaslighting that I had to fight. I choose my healthcare providers very carefully. And when I see red flags in a healthcare provider, I just quietly move on to another one.
I give you credit for continuing to search for the right people, because I stopped altogether for a very long time. And I truly took my health into my own hands because of the anxiety, because of the mental load. I was exhausted. I couldn't think about even stepping foot in another doctor's office, waiting for another result. Got to a certain point where I said, I don't care about the result anymore. I just want to feel better.
I did that for 2 years also.
I'm good now. I go back when I need to. I think you're right. Going back a little further, conventional medicine has its place. Been in for strep, and antibiotics are not my favorite thing because I worked so hard to heal my gut, and I only take it when I really, truly need it. Also, the experience and the process and the decisions we make are so personal. And that's why I never push somebody to take a medication or quit a medication. They have the choice to continue doing what they're doing, to shift it however fits their life. And if I can teach them how to fit a lifestyle in along with it and it works, that's the goal. We're trying to figure out what works and what makes you feel the best. How has this journey melded in with your nonprofit?
Oh, that's such a great question. Thank you for asking. So we have what we call adventure camp, and we take 15 youths age 6 to 16 into the backcountry in northern Colorado, and we teach them all kinds of adventures. A lot of the adventures that I use to heal myself, like archery and whitewater kayaking. We teach them everyday conservation, like the things that you put into the ground near your home goes into the water and creates either good water or unhealthy water, and planting native species plants and not invasive species. But we also spend a lot of time, in addition to the adventure sports activities, we spend a lot of time just listening to these kids. And there's a lot of hopelessness and a lot of suicide ideation among children as young as 10 years old told us they were thinking about suicide. And children nowadays are dealing with a very rapidly changing society. And if you think it's hard on an older person, a senior, it's equally hard on a very young person, and they're really struggling with all of the changes that are happening around them very quickly. So I bring in some mental health strategies. We talk to them about food. We serve them Mediterranean style diets. We serve them healthy snacks. and they take all of this knowledge back home to their families. And so we've been doing this since 2021. And last year we started taking entire families to camp. So we had the youth camp just for youth, and then we had family camp. And so you'd have from grandchildren to grandparents and everyone in between all going to camp together. And many of these adults have never been to camp. They've never gone kayaking or hiking or paddleboarding or done archery. They've never had a nature walk. They've never learned about conservation, because when we talk, I know conservation has been given a negative connotation these days, but what I'm talking about is teaching catch and release fishing. Because if you take every fish you catch, soon there will be no fish. So those kinds of practices, and teaching people about how if you take that trophy fish, those good genes that have the potential to create more fish that are trophy-sized fish that you can enjoy catching and releasing back to the water, then you're harming your own environment. And what if one day in an emergency you need that fish for food? Then that fish won't be there for you. So that's what I mean about conservation, and making it accessible to ordinary people who don't have a lot of money. So that's how we tie all of what I am learning as a natural health care practitioner in my own life. I'm helping young people and families learn those same things when they come to adventure camp and when they come to our events.
I love this so much. What an amazing venture.
Thank you so much. And what has been wonderful, I know people are listening to me. I'm Nigerian, Irish, and I have ancestors from Spain, and I look like a Black woman. What was particularly lovely about this program is that we brought people together from all walks of life, no matter their label, no matter, as long as they had a financial need, all genders, all people, all races, all religions, just coming together to recreate. We don't care about what label you use. And we were supported by the local police, fire, EMS, sheriff, and FBI. They all went into a dunk tank to raise money for our organization. And besides it being a lot of fun, it was a great way to show our law enforcement officers and first responders in the positive light that we know they should be shown in.
Beautiful. So what is the name of the nonprofit company?
It's called the American Adventure Sports Club. And we started it in Northern Colorado, and we're looking to expand it throughout the US by having other nonprofit organizations who are already doing something in the outdoors to partner with us to bring this to their community. So we have to do a lot more fundraising before we can do that. We're a 501c3, so if you'd like to make a donation, you can find us at aasc.org.
I'll be sure we share that in the show notes as well. That is wonderful. Where can the listeners find you if they would like to connect?
Well, I have the New Normal Big Life blog at nnbl.blog. And from there, you can find the New Normal Big Life podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I hope you'll sign up for our newsletter, because then you'll have access for our free step-by-step plans to implement the things that we talk about on the podcast, and also have access to our ebooks and other free content.
Thank you so much, Antoinette. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Your journey and your message is just incredible. And I know you're going to provide so much value to the listeners. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And thank you for the work that you're doing. I wish I had found your program and your podcast when I was going through my journey, because I think I would have gotten help a lot sooner. But I'm really grateful for what you're doing.
Thank you. Well, together we will spread the word and share our message of hope and healing. So thank you so much.
I hope this podcast has helped you in your autoimmune journey. If you find value and inspiration in this episode, please leave a 5-star rating and review and share the episode with a friend. When you do, you are helping this podcast reach people around the world who are ready to live a pain-free life. The information and opinions shared in this podcast are for educational and informational purposes only. The content within this podcast is not a substitute for professional care. Always seek the advice of a physician or medical professional to answer health-related questions. Implementing the advice shared on this podcast should be done at your own risk. Actions taken by listeners as a result of the content shared on this podcast is not the responsibility of the host or creator. This podcast does not endorse and is not affiliated with treatments or products mentioned in this podcast unless otherwise specified. Products or treatments shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only. Always seek the advice of a medical professional for answers to product or treatment questions. All content, including but not limited to text, graphics, logos, and material shared under the Autoimmune Reboot podcast, is protected by copyright and all applicable laws. Any kind of unauthorized distribution or use of this content is strictly prohibited and will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Listening to this podcast is acknowledging your agreement with these terms.